Welcome back. Billionaire Jim Pattison has had close personal relationships with several U.S. presidents. In fact, he's a trustee of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation. Now, here is part 2 of my exclusive interview with Jim Pattison, taped at his executive offices in Vancouver. You have been clearly very involved in politics in Canada, but also in the U.S. You've been quite close with a number of presidents and other politicians. Curious what you think about President Bush. Looking back on it, not a lot of perspective, but a little perspective now. What kind of president was he?
George W. Bush?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he had a lot of tough things hit him. You know, he was a president not very long, few months, I guess, when 9/11 hit, which changed the world. And then he made a judgment call, I guess, to go into Iraq. And that, of course, had such a huge impact on the whole thing. You know, I just really don't know enough about you know, you can't understand why people make decisions unless you have all the facts.
Sure.
And certainly I wasn't in any position to know any of the facts, let alone any significant ones. But I think as time goes by, I think that history will treat and look at George W. Bush better than they're looking at it now. That's my opinion.
I know you've spent quite a bit of time in Israel. You've been a real supporter of Israel. Where, in your opinion, where are things in terms of that country, and what is your interest in Israel? I mean, why are you such a supporter of the country?
Well, we have been a supporter of Israel for 2 or 3 reasons. One of the reasons is that they're a democracy over in the Middle East, and I think as the United States have supported them, and the Western world, I think, have supported democracy, and we're supporters of that. Secondly, that the Jews in Israel are sort of very much involved in the development of Christianity, of which we're supporters. So, and I think that it's an important part of the world to have stability, and so we've supported them.
And I know that you know, a number of folks I know who evangelical Christians support Israel and publicly state that there's a biblical imperative to support Israel, to have a homeland for the Jews, since that's a significant part of Scripture, and by having a homeland for the Jews, that helps bring forth the second coming. I'm curious what you think about that as a motivation for supporting Israel.
Well, I can't, I'm not a Bible scholar, so I can't really respond to that, except we have always been supporters of Israel as a citizen of a democracy, Canada, and also as a Christian believer that thinks it's a good thing to support Israel.
You say you're not a Bible scholar, but you are a church-going man. I'm sure you've heard those words from Christ that I think what the quote is: "It's harder for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." When you hear words like that, though, in church, I'm curious what you think about this as a wealthy man.
I don't do anything different than I did when I was growing up. I live in a house better than the house I was raised in, and but you know, I've never thought of. I do the same things that I did when I was growing up, basically.
If you weren't a Christian, do you think that would have changed your business life?
I don't think so. I mean, I've always kept my business, and we have certain values here that I think most business people have honesty, integrity, treat people with respect, give everybody an equal opportunity, regardless of their religion or their race or their gender. We try to do that, but most people do that. And I think that I just really don't see what most business people are very honest. And there's always somebody that isn't. There's always somebody, whether it's politics or sports or unions or business or people that are church people will disappoint you, or political leaders will disappoint it. And so that's human nature. But, as far as I'm concerned, I think I've tried to keep my business and what I do in my private life personal.
Right. Well, I mean, I know that one of the stories that came out, this is years ago, was there was concern among certain groups that, for instance, because you have these magazine distribution holdings, that some of those places distribute pornography, which would go against your personal beliefs. Where do you, I don't know where that stands right now, but where does one draw the line in terms of being a business person and trying to maximize profit and supporting their own personal and religious values?
Well, I think that we obey the law. And I believe that we've fought wars in our country, and my family, some members have died fighting wars, the last couple, to help us have a democracy, free speech, freedom of religion, and all of the things that we believe in. And so our objective is to make sure we obey the law.
Right.
But for us to impose what we think is right or wrong is really not our business.
As you get older, do you find that faith changing in any way? Increasing, decreasing, modifying?
No, I think the fundamentals are pretty well. I was raised in an environment where we went to church and were taught the Christian principles, and I don't think that fundamentally have I changed my mind about it. I think basically there's some things that I might have different ideas a little bit, but generally the faith that I was taught and raised in, I've stuck with it. I don't think that giving a lot of money to children is necessarily the best thing to do.